Hello, everybody. Welcome yet again to another Days of Our Lives accounting style. Now, it's like my favorite YouTuber, one of my favorites is the urinating tree who loves his dealers. Okay, so let's go through over here and I take a look. So we're now going to be doing weighted average perpetual, which if I'm hiring an accounting instructor, this will be one of the questions that I will ask them to do because it is by far one of the hardest to go through and explain, and you'll see why momentarily. Okay, so let's go back over here and take a look at this. We're going to do weighted average perpetual. So same concepts. We're going to take a total of 51,000 units to cost of goods sold. Our total, I got to give my disclaimer. How can I not give my disclaimer? By the accounting professor, Bennett Tchaikovsky. Hello. Copyright 2008 to 2024 by Bennett Tchaikovsky. All rights are reserved. Any redistribution is strictly prohibited without my prior written consent. Opinions expressed here are those of myself only and do not represent those of Irvine Valley College or the South Orange County Community College District. Okay, let's go back to this. So, part four. So, a couple really important things here is that same concept, 51,000 units we're going to need to take to cost of goods sold. And because we're doing weighted average perpetual, right? We want to have a little chart. My sale date is going to be 11/10/29. My next sale date is going to be 11/15/29. And then I've got a sale date 11/20/29. Okay. And my units sold, right? Same 17,000, 21,000, 13,000. This has to equal up to 51,000 because this is always going to be the same, right? But what I'm trying to do in this particular question is what I am trying to do is I need to come up with a weighted average cost per unit on this sale date. I'm going to take my units sold, multiply it by that weighted average cost per unit. And then this is going to get me the amount to cost of goods sold. Okay. Now, with weighted average perpetual, always fun, always exciting. Let's take a little trip back. And I want to go back over here to what we were doing in the periodic problem. So when we did weighted average periodic, periodic means we assume we are selling everything at the very end of the accounting period. So I took the total goods available for sale, meaning what did I have in my inventory at the time, divided it by my units available for sale, came up with a weighted average cost per unit, and then I basically multiplied that by the units sold, got cost of goods sold. When we're doing weighted average perpetual, right? What I'm going to have to do is for prior to every sale date, I need to figure out is what is the weighted average cost of my inventory prior to the sale date. Okay. So I need to figure out, well, what was the value of this inventory before I made the sale? It's perpetual, right? These purchases have not happened. So what I'm going to need to go through and do is to kind of go through and figure out like, okay, how do I go through and solve this? So let's go through and do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to call this a cost pool pre 11/10/29 sale of 17,000 units, meaning what was the value or the per unit value of all of my inventory as of that date. And so here I'm going to have my cost and then my units. Over here, my beginning inventory, my purchase from 11/3, purchase from 11/5. So the beginning inventory value had a value of 100,000. And this was for a total of 10,000 units, right? My purchase from 11/3 had a total value of 192. And this was for thousand units, right? Okay, so lastly, I had my purchase from 11.5 was a total of 196 for a total of 14,000 units. So the total average cost of my inventory pre 11/10/29 sale is going to be 488 divided by 40,000 units, or a cost per unit pre-sale of roughly $12.20. Now, when you look at these numbers, make sure it kind of makes sense. Like, well, we've got some at 10,000 units at 10, 14,000 at 14, 16 at 12. So I would kind of be expecting, because the 10 doesn't outweigh the 14,000 units, I'd be expecting it between the 12 and the 14, which it kind of is. So this is my cost per unit pre 11/10/29 sale. So what I'm going to go through and do is, up here I have $11 and sorry, $12.20. So the amount that I'm taking to cost of goods sold is going to be 207,400. Now, if you remember from what we were doing in LIFO, is once I sold something, I had to remove it from my inventory, right? So at the very end, we get down to like 17. So what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to now say cost pool post 11/10/29 sale. Okay. And basically, this was my total pre 11/10 sale. So over here, my cost pool pre 11/10 sale over here was a total of 488 less 40,000, but I sold some units. So the number of units I sold a total of 17,000 units. So I'm removing those from the inventory, and the value that I assigned to those units was 207. So my total post 11/10 sale, so yeah, my post 11/10 sale is going to be over here at 280,600 divided by 23,000 units. So after I had 40,000 units available for sale, right? Just sold 17 of them, means basically I have 23,000 left. The value of these is 280,600. Let's go to the next one. So now I'm going to have another sale, right? My next sale was on 11/15/29. So over here, I need to figure out what is my cost pool pre 11/15/29 sale of, I think it was 21,000 units. Yep. Okay. So over here, my total, what I had remaining after my last sale was 280,600, right? So that was what I had in there after my last sale. So coming over here, and now I need to ask myself the question, between this last sale and here, did I have any purchases? The answer is I did. I had a purchase on November 12th. So right over here, 11/12 purchase. The value of that purchase on November 12th was a total of 330,000. For this 330,000, I bought 20,000 units. So coming over here, my total pre 11/15 sale, right? What was in it? It was basically the post sale from 11/10. And then I had this purchase on 11/12. So my total pre 11/15 sale is going to be 610,600 over here, divided by 43,000. And this is where I pray that I did this correctly. And yep, I did. Okay. So my amount over here was $14.20. This is my cost per unit pre 11/15/29 sale. So if I come over here to this part, $14.20. That's how much my cost per unit I'm assigning to this over here. So the total amount I'm basically sending over to cost of goods sold is going to be 298,200. Right? I sold 21,000 units. That's the value I'm going through and assigning. Okay. Now, I now need to go through and basically now do a cost pool post 11/15/29 sale of the 21,000 units. So what I need to do is I'm going to do the same process. Is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to basically say my total pre 11/15 sale was 610,600 divided by 43,000. Okay. So coming over here, this is what was in my pool before I basically made that sale. So my sale 11/15 over here, the value I assigned to the sale was going to be 298,200, and this was for 21,000 units. So my total post 11/15 sale is going to be 610,600 minus 298,200, 43,000 minus the 21,000 units I just sold. Okay. So I'm now going to come over here. I'm going to say now cost pool pre 11/20 sale of 13,000 units. So right over here, I'm going to have my total post 11/16 sale of 312,400 and then those 22,000 units. Okay. So right over here, and then I have to see, did I make another purchase in between those? And the answer is no. I just had two sales back to back. So this is going to make it easier for me. So my total pre 11/20 sale is going to be 312 divided by 22, or it is going to be $14.20 per unit, right? So if I do have two sales back to back, it's basically going to be the same amount. As long as there's no purchase in between, the average is not going to change. Now, on my exams, I may or may not be as nice, but I would just count that you're probably going to have to do another one. So over here, you got $14.20. My total cost of goods sold over here is 184.6. My total cost of goods sold is going to be a total of 690,200. If I know that my total cost is going to be 690,200, right? That must mean that my ending inventory, my goods available for sale minus my cost of goods sold, will be 303,800. Now, we want to check our work. Why do we want to check our work? Because it's always good to check our work. So to figure out the value of the ending inventory when we're going through and doing this, we're going to do the same thing we've been doing. My cost pool post 11/20 sale of 13,000 units. So my total pre-sale was 312,400 minus 22,000 in terms of my cost, and then over here because of my units, right? So then basically my 11/20 sale right over here, this is going to be my 11/20 sale was 184.6. And then over here, I've got 13,000. So my total cost pool, basically post 11/20 sale, is going to be 127.8, and then with 9,000 units. So that's my total cost pool post 11/20 sale. Now, one of the things about this, though, is that how many units did I have in my ending inventory? Well, we know that the ending inventory units have to be 17,000. So the one thing that I have not done is I have this final purchase that I did not include in my cost pool. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So my purchase on 11/27, the total amount of that purchase was 176, and this is for 8,000 units. When I take my cost pool post that last 11/20 sale and I add in those seven to basically I've got 17,000 units at a total cost of 303,800. So when I go through and I look at my chart and I see, oh, 303,800, that's where this amount is going through and coming from, right? So that's how under weighted average perpetual we go through and do it. There's one other method of inventory costing, which I do not cover in this class, which is doing specific identification. Not going to be on any of my exams because it's very specific to like the jewelry business, high-end items. But that right there is inventory costing. I've got a lot of other videos on this, but hopefully you found this one helpful. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you on future videos. Have a great day.